Hello everybody, I come to you from Guangzhou, from the Imperial Springs Hotel, and I'm here with Sean Cleary, who is the founder of the Future World Foundation, amongst many other things. And we found this decidedly a romantic spot to have a conversation and tell you what we're doing here. But we're in the planning committee of a conference, which is the Imperial Springs International Summit that will take place in December this year, and where some very interesting things will be debated. I think it's a fascinating time because we have the convergence of these two events. One is the 40th anniversary of the opening of China to the world, and then at the same time we live in this moment of questioning of the international order within which China has grown and prospered, with the opening of a trade war, the questioning of the international architecture. How do you see these two things connecting, and why do you think it's relevant to learn more and to know about a Chinese perspective on these things?
Well, I heard about 10 years ago when Hu Jintao was doing a foreign trip, a remarkable statement that he made to a small group of people when asked about what he thought was going to happen to China. And what he said was, I paraphrase now, but what he said was that China would assume its natural role as leader of the world after an unfortunate hiatus of 450 years. So I think the first thing to recognize is that the Chinese leadership has had for quite some time a sense of China rising and a sense that China's rise was going to have significant implications for the global architecture and for China's role in the world.
But let me put you on this. When you look at that architecture today, I mean, there's this notion of a Kindleberger trap, this idea that you have the hegemon pulling out, and you have all of these global public goods that are not provided by anybody,
sure.
Whether it's protection of the high seas or it's just the upkeep of the architecture, whether it's UN peacekeeping or the trading regime.
Yeah.
Do you see China ready to step in, or is this? I think this is one of the open questions, but how do you see that evolving in the next few years?
I think if it hadn't been for the global financial crisis after 2008, China would not have felt ready, and China would have preferred to have kept its light under a bushel for a little while longer. As you know, for the last 15 years at least, and arguably for the last 25 years, it's been their strategy not to rise in a manner that anyone else could construe as potentially threatening.
Right.
So peaceful ascendance or peaceful rise was the slogan for a very long period of time. If you go back to the writings that were taking place by Chinese authors at the beginning of the 1990s, the argument was that they should wait until they were roughly economically equivalent to the United States, at least, as they said at the time, no longer a threat to Japan, before they should declare any intentions. Well, of course, they've passed Japan now,
right, yeah.
And the crisis has convinced them that the Western model of global governance is not fit for purpose and is not going to produce the sort of world that they feel comfortable with.
Let me ask you a final question on this, because that's another emerging trap, this idea of the Thucydides trap, that their emergence, no matter the pace, no matter how they construct it, will be perceived as a threat by other countries, fundamentally by the United States. And we've seen that the pivot or the rebalancing of the US to this region. We've seen Trump's rhetoric regarding China as a competitor on trade and other issues scale. Do you think we're going to avoid this trap of, in a shift of power internationally, the emerging power is automatically a threat to the established powers? How do you see that security relationship evolving in the next few decades?
Let's take the comparison of the rise of the United States relative to Western Europe, and in particular the United Kingdom. The reason why there was no Thucydides trap in that context was because there was a sense of common purpose and a sense of alignment. When there is not a sense of common purpose, when there is a sense of antagonism or a sense of divergent normative frameworks, then the Thucydides trap is undoubtedly, as Graham has pointed out quite coherently, a fact of history. So the real challenge right now is whether China and the United States, China and the Western world more generally, can find a common normative framework that will in fact define the sort of world that they wish to collectively co-create in the future. If so, then there's no reason for that trap. If so, there's no reason for the Kindleberger trap, because there will in fact be a capable power willing to step in and share the burden not
Right.
specifically to displace a dominant power under present circumstances, but to co-create a new and appropriate architecture in the future.
Well, I mean, this is clearly one of the bigger questions, I think, about global governance that will have to be resolved. I hope one of the places where this is discussed is this conference over here, and we get more Chinese voices into the debate. But I finish where we began, which is this extraordinary convergence of events. The rise of China, its performance, extraordinary performance economically and otherwise of the last 40 years, and at the same time the collapsing order. And one of the questions is, what is China going to do? What is its contribution going to be to that order moving forward? Some fascinating questions and some fascinating discussions to be had. Sean, thank you for your time.
Great pleasure, Manuel.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. Bye-bye.
Thanks indeed.
Bye-bye.